Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Bitcoin update. Guys, we have around 24 hours remaining on the VIP sale. This will be the last VIP sale we see until 2024. So if you want to join the VIP group and trade altcoins with me on Telegram, make some money on altcoins, you can do so with the VIP sale right now. Last chance till 2024. Go ahead and do that. Guys, without further ado, let's get right into the video. What is going on? Well, quickly, what am I discussing in this video? I'm discussing the Bitcoin price action on the daily chart, Bitcoin price action on the 4-hourly chart, as well as weekly chart. Not only weekly chart, but a few things in the weekly chart that are slightly concerning to quite a few people, including the weekly bearish divergences, including Elliott wave theory, and then also the Gaussian channel trend. The first two I'm quite skeptical of. I'm going to be showing you why I'm not particularly concerned about them, why I think some of the bearish arguments there are actually a little bit weak. We're then going to be diving into the 3-day chart, which is quite important for various reasons, including a bullish golden cross coming in with the 50 SMA and the 200 SMA. And then we're looking at total cryptocurrency market cap and Ethereum and how Ethereum ties back into Bitcoin. So as you can see, there's quite a lot to discuss. You know how I like to do my videos. I like to keep them short and sweet. And so for that premise, for the sake of doing that and keeping it simplistic and not, making you sit for an hour-long video, I'm going to be brushing over everything and giving you all the context you need without excessively diving into it. With that said, let's get straight into it. What is going on in the Bitcoin short term? Why are people concerned about Bitcoin right now? Well, I'll tell you why. Bitcoin is in between a big couple of ranges, right? Basically, below this green box here, below 24K, was the previous range we saw throughout the entirety of the bear market that I just circled. That is the bearish range. We've broken above that, thankfully. It took a little while. Look, we rejected briefly. We got into this range here. Now we're in this range between 24K and 32K, which is kind of like the bullish area, but it's not super bullish. The super bullish area would actually be above 32K, which is when we would re-enter the range. Above the red box, we would re-enter the range we were throughout the entirety of the 2021 bull market. That's the bullish playground we need to get into. And as you guys know, as of right now, and as of what we saw in March as well, we're kind of struggling to get up there, right? We're rejecting, we saw a rejection in March, we're seeing a rejection now, we're kind of at resistance, at the doorstep of that bullish playground, but realistically struggling to break through. So what is the next step for Bitcoin in this region? Well, we can look into that right now, and we can look into it by bringing up a few things. First and foremost, I want to make something very clear. This is the 4-hourly chart. This is Bitcoin zoomed up in this price region, right, where I'm circling. So if we look at the 4-hourly chart, that's what I'm looking at. Basically, Bitcoin is not forming any clearly identifiable structures right now, which is quite frustrating. We had an uptrending line, which formed something like an ascending wedge formation. We broke it to the downside, but it hasn't really led to anything too dramatic. And so for the sake of, trying to find anything to look at, we can keep that line in there, but I doubt we'll retest it again. It's rapidly uptrending. As of right now, the most kind of similar, the kind of what we're looking at really, I mean, it's hard to say because we haven't seen any really confirmed pattern here, but it does kind of look like we're forming some sort of horizontal channel formation. It's just not confirmed yet, in which case that would actually be pretty bullish because a horizontal channel does classify as a bull flag. And so that would be bullish, right? Because we saw a move upwards into this horizontal channel if it is one, and then we'd probably see a move upwards again. So if we are seeing a horizontal channel, that actually could be pretty bullish, but a lot of people are speculating Bitcoin's very bearish right now, and I don't blame them. We're seeing quite strong resistance in the horizontal price region. If we flip the chart over, we invert the chart, you can see that looks like a bounce zone, right? That looks like a strong support, and generally speaking, you'd probably bounce upwards from that, and so that would probably form some sort of cup formation. I can understand why people would be bearish on Bitcoin right now, and for that reason, I think that it does, stand to reason that, a retest of something lower like 28.6K, like even 28K, potentially even 27.2K, somewhere in these regions here would actually be, would be something that's on the table. I don't see why that couldn't happen. I do see a retest as likely or, possible for sure. But I don't see us going much lower than something like 28 or 27.2. I don't see us retesting this green box again, for example. I think that's too low. I don't think we'll go there again. And the reason I'm saying that, and I'm quite confident when I say that, and the reason I'm saying that is because we just have an abundance of support right in between those regions. I'm looking at the weekly chart now, and you can see the green box and the red box is still here on the weekly chart. It's the same as the daily chart, and you can see in between the green box and the red box around 27.2 and moving upwards towards 28, we have something like the 200-week SMA, we have something like the bull market support band, we have things, more than that, we have the Gaussian channel on the weekly chart as well in that price region. We just have an abundance of support in that price region, and even looking at something like the volume profile, that's the region in which we have a real dip on the volume profile and starting to ascend. So I think there is very strong chances, there are very strong likelihoods that if Bitcoin was to correct here, which certainly is possible, we would be caught and we would not retest this region here potentially only in the worst case scenario, we'd actually be caught somewhere in here and see a bounce from there and then go upwards from there. That's what I'd be looking at if Bitcoin was to break down. I actually don't think that Bitcoin is, super, particularly obviously certain to go downwards though. I think there's a lot of nuance to this price region, and I don't think necessarily people really understand that, because look, okay, let me explain something to you real quick. Okay, so basically what we were seeing on Bitcoin was an uptrending support line. Okay, it wasn't retested over here, but we did have a descending channel formation, a descending wedge formation, as you guys might remember. Now, this descending wedge formation actually didn't look like this. It looked something like this, and basically we broke down from a descending wedge formation quite briefly on this wick that I just circled, and it wasn't actually Bitcoin that was, that kind of led to the bounce there. What actually led to the bounce on Bitcoin there? Yes, there was a news event, but news events happen. News events are always justification for price action. What actually led to the bounce was Ethereum. Ethereum retested an uptrending support line similar to the one Bitcoin had, and Ethereum bouncing actually led to Bitcoin being saved. So it's kind of the Ethereum chart that I'm actually putting a lot of weight on right now, because Ethereum saved Bitcoin from a deadly drop from a descending wedge formation, which would have probably led to a breakdown from this yellow line for Bitcoin. And the fact that Ethereum did that means that I'm looking at Ethereum quite closely to potentially see the next move. And as you can see, guys, Ethereum's actually on support right now from a dotted yellow line. So until Ethereum loses that support level, and until Bitcoin loses its support level in this yellow solid line at 29.6, I'm not actually certain at all that Bitcoin's going to go down. I think it's likely. I think it's possible for sure, but I don't think it's a certainty. I think there certainly is a chance that, as I said before, Bitcoin's forming a horizontal channel formation and could be breaking upwards. So I'm not like overly bearish here at all. I just don't think there's enough evidence to be overly bearish or overly bullish. I just think both scenarios are possible. Now, what I do note as well is that if Bitcoin was to break down and if Ethereum was to break down, Ethereum would find support on this yellow line, okay? And that is around, let me go ahead and measure the drop, that is around an 8-9% move away. Now, what is an 8 or 9% move away for Bitcoin, okay? An 8 or 9% move away for Bitcoin, believe it or not, is the support level we were just talking about, right? 28K, 27.2K, which is where all of these layered support zones are. So even if Ethereum was to drop, and meaning even if Bitcoin was to drop, both of those things were to drop, we would see Ethereum probably bouncing on that yellow line and probably bouncing on its yellow RSI line as well, and Bitcoin similarly, right, dropping a similar percentage as Ethereum would bounce on its major support zones in that 27.2k to 28.6k region. So I think that even if Bitcoin was to drop, we'd be in healthy territory. Now, another thing I want to point out, guys, is the RSI uptrending line on Ethereum. That is an uptrending line stemming from November. Okay, it's seen 3 retests, and we're probably going to come retest it again at some point if we do drop down. And we have rejected on Ethereum on the RSI. So again, I do think the drop is slightly more likely. I just don't think it's certain. So if we do drop down and retest this RSI line, we do also have added validity to that RSI line, because that RSI line is reflected on the total cryptocurrency market cap chart, okay? And we'd probably come down and test it at the same time, leading to very strong market support on on Ethereum and total cryptocurrency market cap, and on Bitcoin as per the weekly chart. I hope all of this makes sense to you. Basically what I'm saying, and I'm going to shift into the next topic now because I've covered all I need to cover here. Basically what I'm saying is that Bitcoin doesn't look particularly strong. It's probably more likely to break down. It's not guaranteed, but it's probably more likely to break down. But if it does break down, there's really not much to be worried about, because with the layered support on Ethereum and total cryptocurrency market cap and Bitcoin weekly chart means that Bitcoin will likely be caught for support in between these two red lines and likely wouldn't even go down to retest the major support zone. I think that's probably what would happen. So I'm not worried about Bitcoin right now. Yes, we're seeing resistance in this region. Yes, short term, we're probably leaning slightly more bearish, but I don't even think that's clear because there's no market pattern identifiable here. It's just a speculative market pattern. But I think the Bitcoin's in a healthy position regardless on a macro scale and on a medium term scale. Now, a lot of people have challenged my macro view on Bitcoin, pointing to something like a bearish divergence on the weekly chart. And although I understand the challenge, I don't necessarily think that bearish divergences on the weekly chart are actually important in the slightest, basically. And I know this sounds ridiculous to say, but I simply think it's true. What we have right now, as you can see, bearish divergence, I'm going to draw it in for you. Yellow downtrending line in the RSI, 2 peaks, one's lower than the other. And we've got an uptrending line on the price chart, 2 peaks. And let me go ahead and draw a line, sorry. 2 peaks, one higher than the other, okay? And not much higher than the other. It's barely higher than the other. But basically, higher highs in the price chart, lower highs in the RSI, that's a bearish divergence. That generally leads to the price going downwards. People are coupling this bearish divergence with the fact that we are seeing I wouldn't even say it's a fact, to be honest with you, with the idea that we're seeing a 5-wave Elliott wave theory correction, which is, wave 1 here, wave 2, going down wave 3, wave 4, wave 5. Now, you might remember I covered this in yesterday's video, but basically they're saying that the evidence for the fact we're seeing a fifth wave downwards to new lows would be the fact that we're seeing a bearish divergence in the weekly chart. Now, I fundamentally disagree with this for 2 reasons. I'm going to tell you why. Okay. First and foremost, I'm going to start with the bearish divergences. Okay, I disagree with both, but I'm going to start with the bearish divergences. We see bearish divergences all the time in the weekly chart, and they don't always play out. Yes, we saw one over here, okay, and this one played out, although it took a very long time to do so. The bearish divergence was triggered in February. We didn't start dropping until April, so around 2 months to play out there. But yes, it did play out, that is for sure. But what I want to note, guys, is we also saw, and this is very important, okay, so listen up here. We also saw a bearish divergence between these 2 regions here, okay? And what you can see, bearish divergence here, basically bearish divergence here. What we can see is that, all right, essentially, we saw a bearish divergence here, or almost a bearish divergence, okay? It was essentially a horizontal line, but we saw a bearish divergence in the fact that the RSI line was downtrending much more rapidly, which still qualifies in my opinion. The point is, we saw a bearish divergence, even if it was a hidden bearish divergence with an uptrending line here and a downtrending line in the RSI, even if it was a hidden bearish divergence, the point is, divergences in the weekly chart are weak. We saw a bearish divergence here. What did we see? We saw a massive pump on Bitcoin afterwards. What does this suggest to me? What does this tell me? It tells me, guys, that regardless of the fact we saw a long-term bearish divergence, hidden bearish divergence in the weekly chart between July and June 2019, all the way through to August 2020, right? Over a year of divergences. Regardless of the fact that we saw that, the cyclical theory, which suggested we saw a bull market, was actually much stronger. Okay, so this suggests to me that cyclical theory is much stronger than bearish divergences on the weekly chart. I have another example if that's not convincing enough. I can understand how it might not be. Backing the same point I just made, in which cyclical theory is stronger than bearish divergences or bullish divergences, we had 2 separate bearish divergences on the Bitcoin price chart, right, in the same period of time that I just pointed out before, okay? So what I mean by that is that we saw this period of time over here just before the bull market, just after the halving, before the explosion upwards as per cyclical theory. We saw 2 separate bearish divergences, both of which on the weekly chart, both of which just as important as the one we're seeing now, supposedly, and both of which failed, and we moved upwards massively and like 20x on Bitcoin. So both those bearish divergences, 2 times in the same part of the cycle as we saw in 2020 to 2019, okay, both of which were outweighed by the cyclical theory. The point I'm making, I could go back and show you more, by the way. The point, and I could show you the same thing with bullish divergences as well. The point I'm making is that not only are weekly chart bearish divergences unreliable, okay, they're also weaker than the cyclical structures. And the cyclical structures right now, for me, are quite strong. I know what the cyclical theory suggests. I know what Bitcoin cycles suggest. Bitcoin cycles suggest that basically we've bottomed out already on Bitcoin. And the fact that people are coupling this bearish divergence on Bitcoin with the Elliott wave theory that's suggesting we go lower, to me, sounds like it's incorrect. Now, could we see a small correction on Bitcoin? Yes. Do I think that small correction would be as per the weekly chart divergence? No. I don't think that weekly chart bearish divergences or weekly chart RSI, to be honest, in much sense, actually affects price action too much. And the reason being is this. I think, guys, that people need to remember, I'm not saying they're irrelevant, they're not irrelevant, and it's definitely not a good thing. What I am saying is I think people need to remember that the weekly chart is actually quite a diluted view of Bitcoin, okay? When things occur on the weekly chart, and especially looking at monthly chart and year chart, when things occur on the weekly chart, you have to remember the price moves because people react to things. The price moves because people buy when things are bullish and they sell when things are bearish, okay? People think about the bearish divergence for a little while. People might buy because of bearish divergence or sell because of bearish divergence for a little while. But in 3-4 weeks, they've forgotten about it. They've moved on to the next thing. It loses its relevance. And that's the problem with long-term chart indicators, okay? Other than things that are cyclical. If things are cyclical, it's a cyclical pattern. I don't think that divergences necessarily have cyclical patterns at all. What I'm seeing here is a bearish divergence, yes, and we've seen that before, and it has played out before, but it also hasn't played out before. So I don't think it's necessarily concrete evidence, and it's certainly not evidence to suggest that the Elliott wave, fifth wave, hasn't played out yet. It's going to go down. And I want to say one more thing. I know this has been a slightly confusing topic. I know I'm freestyling here. I'm rambling a little bit. I apologize for my stuttering, but I think you can understand the points I'm making. I've made 2 pretty clear observations. I mean, one over here, which is the bearish divergence did play out, and 2 just before the previous cycle, bearish divergence didn't play out. So I think that's pretty clear that it's not always going to happen. And what I will say as well, Elliott wave theory in itself, and this is what I covered yesterday, is very, very subjective. Now, who's to say that this is the Elliott wave theory we need to be looking at? Who's to say that this Elliott wave pattern is the correct one. Who's to say that this fifth wave hasn't occurred yet? I can show you right now another way to draw this. So this is one way the bears would draw it. I can show you a way the bulls would draw it. They would draw it like this. They would say, okay, wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, right? Wave 4, wave 5, and that was wave 5 there. Okay, that's another way you can draw it. And that wouldn't be wrong. Do you know why? Because we bounced here. We bounced 40% here. Does that not constitute a wave? You know, the thing with Elliott wave theory is it's so subjective. I would actually say that this is the more likely way the Elliott wave theory played out, because this was the cyclical bottom as per the cyclical theory. So to say that we haven't seen wave 5 yet, we're going to see wave 5 now, is completely ignoring the longest, strongest, you know, best trend Bitcoin has, the 4-year cycle. So I don't think that Elliott wave theory is an objective form of analysis. I think it's highly subjective. And I think when you're pairing it with things like the weekly divergence that we're seeing, which is, you know, gray area at best, because we've seen it play out, you know, a few times. I've also seen it not play out a few times. It's basically 50-50, right? When you're pairing it with something like that, I don't think that adds any weight to it at all. I think that Elliott wave theory is pretty much useless because it's way too subjective. And I think that the weekly divergences, they're not useless, okay? But given the fact that Elliott wave theory is pretty much useless in my opinion, I don't think they hold much weight at all. So no, I delete both of them from a chart. What I would do on the weekly chart is I'd look at something concrete. What is concrete? Well, we know 4-year cycle. I'm not going to bore you with that. But we also do know there is a pattern with the Gaussian channel on the weekly chart. And this is more concrete than either of the two things I just looked at combined. So let's go to logarithmic chart and show you what's happening here. Basically, the Gaussian channel is quite strong, and the reason it's quite strong is because every time we move into the Gaussian channel, we move through the Gaussian channel. That might not sound compelling, but it is. Look at this. We moved into it here, we moved through it. We moved into it here, we moved through it. We moved through it, we moved through it, we moved through it. Every time we move through it, we see a dramatic move to the upside or downside. Again, every time we move into the Gaussian channel, okay, through the center line, we move through the Gaussian channel, and we've just moved into it, and we've just moved through it, and we're probably going to see an excess move to the upside at some point, like we've seen in the past. Guys, we've seen this on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is the 8th time. 7 out of 7 so far, and right now on the 8th time. That is a concrete trend. Every time we move into the Gaussian channel and break the center line, we move through the Gaussian channel. It is a macro trend. It takes a long time to play out, but when it does play out, it plays out excessively, and we see dramatic moves to the upside and the downside. That is something that is concrete. That is something that can't be altered based on your subjective opinions about Bitcoin. Unlike the Elliott wave theory, okay? And I know RSI divergences, yes, they are concrete as well. They're not subjective, but the fact of the matter is they don't play out 100% of the time like this Gaussian channel trend has. So I'd suggest if you're looking at the weekly chart, you pay more attention to trends that have a 100% accuracy rather than something like a 50 to 60% accuracy like the divergences. And I don't even think the divergence, you know, I'm not saying we should completely ignore the divergences. I don't think that's what we should do at all. I think that the bearish divergences does hold weight for sure. But I do think as well that just because we have a bearish divergence, it doesn't mean we're going to new lows on Bitcoin, right? Just because we have a bearish divergence, which lasted for the last 3 months, it doesn't mean we're going to below 15K. Doesn't mean we see a price drop of 50%, right? We could see a small correction downwards, sure, right? That could happen. And look, even if we go downwards much more than I expect and go down to 20K again, cyclical theory is still relevant, guys. Cyclical theory still works. And guess what? We'd still be within the Gaussian channel. We wouldn't have even lost it yet. So we wouldn't have even lost the Gaussian channel trend yet. We could still move upwards and move through it. The fact of the matter is, the bears have a lot of work to do to discount the bullish argument. Bitcoin can go very, very low, and the bullish argument on the macro scale can still be very, very valid. That's what I'm kind of pointing out here. So I don't think it's worth being concerned about on a macro scale. I think the only thing you should be slightly concerned about here on Bitcoin is the short term. And I think even medium term, we're in good territory and bottoming out somewhere there. So I don't think Bitcoin's to be concerned about right now. I know that's a controversial point of view, but I look at the charts and I look at the charts how I see them, and I don't, listen to my emotions. I listen to what I'm seeing on the charts, and I think I've displayed that very well in this video. All of the points I've made have been fact-based. All of the points the bears are making right now, I think are a grey area at best, and I think I've displayed that very well in this video and previous videos I've done. So macro scale, I'm bullish on Bitcoin like usual. Thank you guys for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Guys, go ahead and sign up to the Bitget exchange using my referral link in the description below. Get a 15% trading fee discount and access to an exclusive reward center using my referral link. This exchange has about 100 or so, probably more than that by now, coin pairs to trade on spot and also futures, accessible by anyone in the world. Yes, they do have restricted countries, but you can sign up using a VPN, clicking other as country of origin, sign up from anywhere in the world. 5 times lower fees than Binance, extremely cheap fees, protection fund, reserve information. Guys, sign up using my referral link below. We've also got Crypto Academy. The name of the course is the Become a Trader course, and that is because by doing this course, you will become a trader. Quite simple, quite straightforward. Read the bio of the course on the website, look up about what we offer in the course in the unit topic section of the website, and throw us an email at cryptoacademycourses@gmail.com. We'll get back to you shortly with all the payment information. Guys, thank you for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.